first, quite a few questions. I'm going to leave room for a little bit of time afterwards.
You know what I'd like to is if we talk for a little while, and then you do some questions, and then you take it back, and then they're bad.
We're gonna shut you down.
We're going to that. I think it's better to mix it up a little bit. Get going.
Fun with me. I mean, I was just going to start with in the kind of the obvious place, especially given how often you've worked with Abel Ferrara, given the fact that Abel has been a favorite filmmaker of ours over the years, somebody who's been here many times. Yeah, I'm just curious, and somebody whose films we're kind of showcasing within this retrospective. We're not showing every film that Willem and Abel made together, but quite a few of them, including Siberia, which comes later and is really closely related to this film. Can you just talk about how that relationship started, how well you knew his work before, and maybe how that working relationship has evolved?
Sure. First of all, thanks for coming. It's nice to see a full house. I knew Abel. Abel was around. I was working at this theater, the Wooster Group. He was around. He was making these movies. He would always, when he was casting a movie, he'd go out to about 10 of the same actors for one role. And whoever he could get cheapest and fastest, he'd usually take. In the old days, you know? So I was very aware of King of New York. I was very aware of Bad Lieutenant, because he really cast a wide net to see who was interested in working with him. But I was always, at that point, I think I felt like I was busy with the Wooster Group, and I also couldn't take that much time off. I could only do like a movie a year, and I thought, if I'm going to do a movie here, I'm going to do something to balance the kind of work I was doing at the Wooster Group, which was less than traditional theater. So I thought, if I'm going to do movies, I'm going to do not movies, but something different. Because the collaboration and the experimentation was satisfied at the Wooster Group. So I knew him, I liked him. He was, you know, like a character. You know, he was famously, you know, quite, you know, a nightlife guy, and also in love with certain things that he later couldn't be in love with, and he stopped doing that stuff. So I knew him. And then I think the first thing I worked with him on was a film called No Rose Hotel. And that was the beginning. And then we both moved to Italy. And we were neighbors, basically. I could see his house from my house. We moved to Rome, just by coincidence. I think he went to Rome to get clean and to get a fresh start. I went to Rome for love and just a new chapter. And we hung out together, and we were like idiot immigrants, really, in Rome. But I always liked him. I liked the fact that he was a self-starter, that he loved to shoot, that he didn't wait for stuff. He was very, you know, he loved cinema, and he really is like one of those guys that I've been lucky to work with some in my career, whether it's Lars von Trier or I don't know, the people that really dedicate themselves to what they do. And I love him for that, and with time, I'm kind of going on, sorry, I just woke up. From a nap, I got up very early. I've been shooting a movie here.
It's not a vampire.
Yeah. So basically, we may or may not get into it, but the relationship evolved a lot. And by this point, we're very close collaborators. Probably the really close collaboration started a little bit with, no, actually, No Rose Hotel was particular, and he was kind of a mess then. And that movie was very rough to shoot. But then Go-Go Tales and 444 were two films that we really started to collaborate. And when I say collaborate, he usually doesn't have a script. Ever since Nicky St. John stopped working with him. He's worked with Chris Zoyce, for example. He's worked with writers, but he always lately he prefers kind of a scenario or an idea, and then you kind of bang stuff out.
Well, and as far as you're concerned, it seems like it's not a situation where, you know, whatever he starts with, whether it's a script or not, that he starts with that and then comes to you. It seems like you're involved.
Oh, he
very
talks,
early.
you know, it's like, what do you got, Abel? And he says, when are you free, you know? What are we doing? What are we thinking about doing? So we develop it together, and I check in with him. And he's, you know, he's a dreamer, but at the same time, he's very direct in getting stuff done, which is his downfall a little bit because he gets impatient, and sometimes he gets financed by people that are very unconventional and are kind of sleazy, and sometimes the resources aren't there. But the beautiful thing about him, and this is also something that I love about any filmmaker, they work with what's there, you know, and they don't wait, and they don't, they're independent in the respect that, yeah, they don't point to stuff, they're there with the stuff and they make something. And for me, you know, the film may be good or bad, but when you have that kind of contact with material and you're working with people in a real concrete way, and the world is very concrete, you can make a bad film, but it's always going to have a kind of truth and a kind of document to it that, for me, totally is better than a lot of, you know, conventional movies.
Well, and clearly this movie, I mean, I know that you've both been very careful, you know, you've really emphasized the point that, you know, you're not playing Abel in this film, you're not playing yourself, but clearly there's a lot of, you're incorporating a lot of that material. I guess I'm curious about that in general, but especially, you know, I think of when it comes to speaking to you about your career in this kind of context, the acting class scene. I mean, that feels like we're watching you teach an acting class, and it feels like you're speaking from the heart.
A little bit. You know, the thing about Tomasso that I think is interesting is that is an improvised movie. Absolutely. With a very small crew. And with the exception of one little scene in the police, where he goes into this police station and he's interrogated, that Abel was playing with some sort of thing from Master and Margarita, you know, kind of, but it was pretty abstract. And it became something else in the doing, but he was kind of obsessed with that. So that was a scripted thing, which kind of went away very quick because the actors didn't speak English, and it became very difficult because they were cops. What else was I going to say about that? What was your question?
Well, I'm just curious, I mean, because, for instance, some of what you say in that acting scene.
Okay, the whole improvisation thing. What's interesting is I know him really well, and of course I'm working with his real, well, ex now, but his real partner and his real daughter. Everybody in the movie that you see they're basically not actors. They're people from mostly his life, but my life. There's some overlap because we're close. And he basically would tell me a story, and then we'd roll. And I'd try to, you know, do that story. I would do that story in the respect of I'd try to create that atmosphere, and we'd shoot away. There was no conventional shooting. It was very loose shooting. Peter Zeitlinger, who frequently works with Werner Herzog, a big Austrian guy, light on his feet. I mean, the idea that we can get in one of those little elevators, and, you know, the scene where I confront the homeless guy, I had never met that guy. No, I had never talked to him, and it wasn't clear. And he was really drunk. And this was something that happened in Abel's life, that this guy would scream and it would wake up his kid, and Abel would scream at him from you know, like the 6th floor, and then he'd go down and confront him. But I had never met the guy, so when we do that, we're doing it in real time, and Zeitlinger is just following me and getting in this little elevator, going down, going in and out of doors without a cut, and then I confront this guy who I've never met. And I'm a little nervous because I don't know what's going to happen. And And we did it basically without a cut, but I think at one point he kept on saying, "Where's my 50 euros?" So there was another dimension there, but you know, that's kind of exhilarating because the setup is rooted and then you play it. You play it out to some sort of conclusion. Of course, there's, you know, some shots that are more designed than others, but sometimes it would be crazy. Like, I haven't seen the film in a long, long time, but like there's one kind of rambling sequence when I'm on a subway and all that. You know, it was just like we were finished with one thing, and he said, "See you back at Piazza Vittorio." And I took the subway, and Zeitlinger came with me. Really, I laughed. I was watching the credits, and you know, I thought, where were those people? It's still a story, you know. It's with technology now. It doesn't take sometimes a lot to make a movie, but put it together and to get it out there, that's where all the people are involved. But it was a very small crew. Some not, well, very few like professionals or seasoned anyway, but a good spirit, yeah.
But specifically, you know, you talk in that scene, but I think I've also seen you use this kind of language in interviews about performing being for you largely about the balance between abandon and control. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, because that rings true, because it does seem like you bring these things together. And,
well, in an improvisation, I have to drive. You know, his wife, for example, his you know, partner. She's very present, but she can't build a scene. You know, she's not used to being an actress. So sometimes there were problems. She tried to start writing, and she tried to direct it too. So that's the control part. I'd always have to kind of control, but keep it loose, you know? And as far as the spirit of it, always loose. You had a kind of rough idea of what had to be accomplished. But for example, like in the NA, the AA scene, you know, Abel tells me that story. You know, it's his story. I'd heard some version of it before, but he tells it right before we do it. It is his meeting, and these people, you know, do it with me. And I get up there and I tell it as best that I can and try to imagine. So I've got the form very clear, but it's very loose about where I have to go and what I have to feel and what has to happen. Also the acting class. I've done little workshops and things, but I'm not really a teacher. And this is years ago, and my Italian was quite bad then. I mean, it was okay for the movie, but to really explain some of these things to these people, and they just came in. We didn't know each other, and we kind of shot, you know, and I did some games and fooled around, and that was it. And then, you know, then occasionally, you know, you get inspired by something and you say, you know, he's like, do you mind taking off your clothes, you know? And then I get with her in a room and then we work something out, you know, but we work it out in real time. We don't plan anything.
And what is it like to move from that kind of process? I mean, to go back and forth from that to something, you know, far more structured with a filmmaker who's, you know, expresses himself very differently.
I don't want to be glib, but it's all surrendering to, you know, a kind of pretend frame, you know. It's similar, really, always, because you're stepping out of your life and applying yourself to circumstances. I never think about, you know, probably the reason why I'm not a director. I mean, I really like to roll up my hands and collaborate, but the reason why I'm not a director is I don't want to be responsible for what stuff means or where it's going. Because, no, really, because as an actor, if you get too obsessed with what yes, you have certain intentions and there's certain things that you imagine you want to accomplish, but at the same time, if you think about those too heavy, it's going to constrict you, and then you're going to start to not get self-conscious, but just limit your possibilities, you know.
And okay, I like this idea of going back and forth. Let me ask one more, and then
yeah, I kind of go on.
Okay, right?
I'm out of practice on Q&As. I haven't been doing them lately.
Well, I am curious. Then I lost my train of thought as I said that. Okay, never mind. Let's go out to the audience real fast while I remember what I was about to ask.
First of all, thank you for being here. It was a great film. I just wanted to ask. There's a lot of nudity, and you're with a lot of naked women. Is this better than Tinder, being on the set, or is it?
Back to me.
What was the last part?
Is it better than being on the Tinder app for online dating? Okay.
It has nothing to do with anything. I don't know. You started out good, but then you crashed.
Okay.
But you bought me time to remember what I was going to ask. So I'm curious about how you're.
Let's just talk. No questions to the audience.
So I'm curious just about how your communication with Abel has evolved over the years, because I know, again, we've experienced him enough here. He has a very particular way of expressing himself, and I get the strong sense from these, especially later films, that you are on that wavelength. But he seems like someone who you would have to get on a certain wavelength in order to be able to.
Yeah, he screams a lot, but he never screams at me. And that's the secret of our relationship.
A beautiful relationship. Okay, let's try again. Anybody else out there? Front row.
Hi, thank you for being here. I was just wondering about, I guess, if you have any connection to Tommasso's relationship with yoga and pranayama, because the way that you modeled it was so beautiful, and it felt like it was part of your real life.
It's not to advertise, but since you asked, I've been a Ashtanga practitioner for maybe 35, 40 years. Yeah. Okay. It helps me.
Anybody else?
First off, Willem, thank you so much for being here. Me and my girlfriend were raised on your movie, so it's a privilege to be in the same room as you. This is my first time watching Tomasso, and I feel your performance was complex and beautiful and very vulnerable. And I feel there's a theme in the movie that may talk more about vulnerability in men, and almost like we keep a lot inside and can't express it, and it becomes explosive. As you can see in the film, as a performer, is there anything that helps you kind of envelop that headspace to be vulnerable and kind of live in that moment and surrender to the art?
I don't think about vulnerability, but you personalize things. And this is very close because some of this is about Abel, some of this is about me. Obviously, back to the Tinder gentleman. There's some tension about older men and their relationships with their partners and with young girls and all this kind of thing. So that's in the mix. I mean, that's not a confession, or that's not my life, but that's floating around. So when you address yourself to that, because as you get older, certain things change, certain things get better, certain things get worse, and you wrestle with those things. And Abel is a little older than me. I'm probably domestically more stable than he is, but still these things are in your head, so it's about applying yourself to imagining a different life. If I wasn't married for 20 years, or if I was around 20 years and I got paranoid about my much younger wife, seeing someone, that's in my imagination. Because I do have a younger wife. But once I had a much older wife, so there.
Yeah, I think one of the themes that comes across to me most strongly in this film, but also in Siberia, is the kind of fear of the rug being pulled out of your life. I mean, the sort of fantasy sequences where, are they fantasy or are they not fantasy? But the sequences where, for instance, where the kid is hit by the car, she's running across, that sort of recurs in a very interesting way in Siberia, but that to me is one of the really visceral, and one of the things that I feel like this movie captures more than others I've scene?
Yeah, I mean, we're not there to, put it on his sleeve, but there's stuff that we're interested in there. It's things that we're struggling with, If not in reality, it's certainly in our imaginations. It's not. Yeah, it's personal. It's not a formulaic rom-com.
Anybody else? How about you there?
Yeah, thank you again for being here.
Sure, my pleasure.
You spoke a little bit about the improvisational aspect of this film. Now, I was wondering, as an actor, what do you feel like you learned from being in a production that is mostly improvisational?
I don't know. No, I don't know yet anyway. You learn your lessons intuitively, I think. Everybody thinks improvisation is a wonderful thing. And there are wonderful things about, capturing these moments that weren't planned and all that. But in general, I'm not crazy. I like a nice structure, and then you live inside that structure. You make kind of smarter films, you make more designed films, you make more committed, you make sharper films. So improvisation in itself ain't that great, because actors tend to try to write things, they try to be clever. Even I may be struck by a bolt of lightning, but for me, even in Cassavetes movies, sometimes the actors look very self-conscious, So the important thing was this bond that Abel and I have, and he's able to say, this is what happened, here's the setup, there's my wife, there's my kid, you know what happened, cook dinner, have that conversation, and you try to touch on some of the events that he does, but you're not totally tied to that. And also, when you're there, stuff happens, the kind of brutal scene with a lamp and all that, that's straight from something that happened with Abel. And that was hard because the kid, he wanted to go again, we did it maybe 1 or 2 times. And I said, I can't do